Hi everyone, I'm Flip Pideaux and welcome back to Old Bull. Many, maybe most of our viewers are traders active on PredictIt, something we spend a lot of time looking at on this show, and that's the market launched in 2014, which has since grown into the dominant political prediction market, taking the place of, and I would say exceeding in a number of important ways, its ultimately troubled predecessor, InTrade, which, if you're not familiar, was an Ireland-based prediction market that got in a bit of trouble a few years back. First with the CFTC for offering unregulated options contracts to US traders, and later for significant financial irregularities, including the payment of millions of dollars in insufficiently documented payments to its founder, John Delaney, shortly before he perished in an attempt to climb Mount Everest. So, against that checkered legacy, PredictIt launched in 2014 with a special exemption from the CFTC, and I had the opportunity to be part of that launch team, doing market curation and various odds and ends on strategy and business development. Now, as part of their very talented team, I got to help PredictIt launch over 5,000 markets, legally serving an ever-growing universe of users who've since traded over 1 billion shares. Now, whether that's because of the sound legal footing or the soap opera / circus environment of uncertainty of the Trump era, where politics has become a daily source of high-stakes, low-brow entertainment, or simply because of the uncommon brilliance of the people behind it, PredictIt has become the go-to source for information on everything for who's going to win an election, who's about to be indicted, or what Trump is about to tweet. Today, we have the good fortune to be joined by the man behind the curtain. With us now is John Phillips, the CEO of Aristotle Inc., the political technology firm that powers the popular prediction market, PredictIt. How are you, John? Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Flip. Good to be with you.
Oh, good to have you here. So, our traders are by and large quite familiar with PredictIt, so we won't go through too much of the mechanics of sort of how it works and what it is. But you and I worked together, PredictIt for about 5 years, and now 5 years into the project, what has been most surprising to you about how this has unfolded, how the community and the platform has grown?
Oh boy, I mean, I've been surprised by a lot. So to say that I thought we would be here when you and I together created that PredictIt would be a vast exaggeration. So there's surprises both in the big picture and then the little things that always never cease to shock me. So little things would be the difficulty of getting a binary outcome in a market that we're creating for the first time strikes me as totally unexpected. At least it's really hard to draw up great questions the first time. The second, the third time you're replicating, it's easier. And of course, you had more experience on the questions team. I was never on the questions team, and you sort of headed it up. But it's been something that I never thought would be as difficult as it is. Sort of big picture stuff. I'm amazed how big the potential market is. Every time I turn around, I think, boy, that'd make a great PredictIt market if people could forecast on this, that, or the other thing. I think I had expected the markets to be more liquid in some cases than they have been. I think you had the experience when we were working together, putting up markets that we thought would be popular and didn't turn out to be so popular. And then others like the tweet market, and the tweet markets, it's amazing how many people want to.
Yeah, those are gangbusters. Yeah, I agree. It is. It's difficult, not only as you put it, to craft good and airtight questions, but it's difficult to predict what traders are going to be interested in. Sometimes people clamor for a certain market and you put it up and nothing happens. Other times you throw something up almost on a lark and it does great. So it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of art form and guesswork at times. So political prediction markets really are not that new. I mean, Iowa electronic markets, for instance, has been around for more than a quarter century, but until recently, it's really been something more of an academic novelty, whereas now it's really clearly something quite more. What do you attribute that to?
Well, I mean, we came to prediction markets as a result of the sort of frustration with the accuracy and the expense entailed in public opinion polling. we were really looking around for alternatives. And Aristotle, as you point out, the parent company, we do a lot of business with pollsters, providing them with samples that are randomly drawn or focused on primary voters in a particular jurisdiction. We're nonpartisan, but we work with a lot of pollsters. It's really, really a tough endeavor now to get an accurate poll at a reasonable cost in a timely way. And then it starts to age right away. So we were looking for alternatives, and that's how we came to sort of predict it. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I initially thought, it's kind of a cross between forecasting and gambling and gamifying. I had no idea there was so much deep literature behind it and ongoing research. I mean, the fact that we have more than 180 researchers now in the United States and elsewhere who are studying different aspects of PredictIt, that's fascinating to me. Why are these markets so accurate? How can they be improved? What are the habits of accurate forecasters? All those things are just really interesting because we're peeling back the curtain a little bit, right, Flip?
Right.
Looking into the future just a little bit, not with 2020 vision, but with some ability to tell what's coming next. I think it's really amazing. I think it's a damn cool thing.
It really is. And, we looked, you and I and others on the team a few years ago now at whether, traders from different political parties or of different political ideologies tended to do better or worse than others. And I remember it wasn't a terribly scientific study that we embarked on, but we found broadly that, Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals tended to do about the same, but that independents, unaffiliated voters tended to do better than those with any political affiliation. So it was kind of an interesting, albeit admittedly anecdotal, but an interesting commentary on perhaps the way that certain biases, conscious or unconscious, may affect the way that people, even when they're financially motivated, and you would think acting as rationally as they can, still allow those kind of biases to affect their decision making. What have you found, to the extent you have, in terms of the way that does influence the way predicted markets operate, the way traders behave, and the way it may impact the prices on the markets and the implied forecasts?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. It segues to what I was hoping we were going to get to talk about, which is some of the biases that impact the accuracy and ultimately the return on investment for predicted traders. And I can't really summarize scientifically here what the data shows, but I mean, some of these biases that apply to stock picking in the stock market or other everyday decisions that we make also apply when forecasting outcomes, political or economic events. So there are roughly 24 different biases. We're going to be putting something out for predicted traders that analyzes how these common biases might be manifested in their own trading behavior and what to look out for. But things like confirmation bias, where you're looking for ways to justify your existing beliefs, that's you can see that all over the comment board for PredictIt. And that's just one of the 24. Anchoring, which is the first thing you judge, influences your judgment of all that follows. You make a quick decision on who's going to be the Democratic nominee, and then it influences the fact that you have new information coming in, but you don't absorb it or accept it as readily as you will the information that you based your first opinion on. There's sunk cost fallacy. How many of us haven't experienced that? You've already put some money into something and you've lost a little bit of it. And as you lose more of it, you become more convinced that this was the right forecast. This is really going to happen. So those are just three of them. But
it is interesting. So it could be a whole curriculum of research on that topic alone. And as you mentioned, obviously in investing and sort of behavioral economics, generally there's a lot of literature about the way that these biases can impact and degrade trading performance. But especially when you're talking about investing and forecasting on political events, electoral outcomes specifically, there's almost no topic on which people are more sort of personally invested. So the idea that you can completely divorce yourself from your preferred outcome or sort of your tribal affiliation and make a totally dispassionate forecast is I'm sure very difficult. And I'm sure if you picked any individual trader, even the best performing trader, it would probably be virtually, if not literally, impossible for them to do so. And yet you have, through the market, you have this aggregate mechanism that, while not perfect, still I think does tend to weed that out in a kind of unique way, where those biases, again, whether it's intentional, conscious, or otherwise, gets punished. And those who are able to divorce themselves from those kind of distortions are rewarded. And so, there's certain limitations to which that's expressed in a market where you have certain restrictions like position limits and things, where sort of the signal of the smart money can't drown out the signal of the dumb money as as efficiently, perhaps in a less restricted market. And yet still you get this aggregate result of something that is smarter than the sum of the traders in forecasting, with all their human imperfections and biases. And that's part of what I think what sort of the magic is in PredictIt and the data that comes from it.
Yeah, there's one of, I want to get back to one of my newfound biases, and it's called the Dunning-Kruger effect.
This is my favorite one. Yeah, favorite one. Absolutely.
So it's the more you know, the less confident you're likely to be.
Right.
I mean, how great is that?
Yeah.
Bertrand Russell said, he was quoted as saying, the whole problem with the world is that fools and fanatics are so certain of themselves, yet wiser people so full of doubts.
Right.
I mean, that certainly applies to me in terms of the more information you say. Now, wait a minute. On the other hand, it's great. Now, I can't even bet on PredictIt, unfortunately. So
sure, and you can see people at either end of the spectrum having a problem in investing generally, and certainly in political forecasting, where if they're completely new to it, or they have kind of an idea, or I hate Trump, or this congressman of mine is definitely going to win, or whatever it's going to be. And I know better than anyone else. And I out argue my friends at the bar. So I'm going to go and I'm going to make $1 million on PredictIt. That's probably someone who's going to be parted with their money, pretty quickly. And yet at the other end, if you've got an academic, a pollster, someone who studies political science all the time, they know all the ins and outs. They know all the kind of black swan events that can trip you up about polling errors. So probably the more you know, that's sort of the curse of knowledge, where now you're paralyzed by it, and you never feel that you can apply a quantitative analysis on any kind of forecast. So maybe there's some kind of happy medium in the middle, the informed but still non-professional punter who's out there making well-reasoned and hopefully unbiased calculations about what's likely to happen, and can they beat the market over time. Maybe not. There certainly are some on PredictIt that have managed to do so. I mean, there's a growing community, I gather, of actual professional full-time PredictIt traders, where this is what they do.
That's right. It's we're gonna the academic piece of this, which is often not emphasized in the news reports about the predicted odds. The academic piece of this is going to contribute more and more in terms of the contribution for some of these people studying the habits of expert forecasters and how markets work, how they assimilate billions of pieces of information, as you once told me, into odds and prices. I think that's one of the things that I find most interesting about this.
So we've also been looking recently at the relative performance of more traditional forecasting methods, some of the data journalists and the 538s of the world, and trying to compare their results with PredictIt's. And of course, there were a couple of academic forays into this after the previous election cycle. We decided to implement this in a kind of a live way and actually put 538's forecasts into a PredictIt portfolio to see over time whether they can beat the market. What's your sense? Again, not that you trade on PredictIt, but what's your sense in terms of if you were to quantitatively look at this over a long period of time, and maybe not even in the current iteration, but sort of the best centralized sort of black box model that a team can put together of analyzing information about fundraising and polling and early states and whatever else, versus the sort of most efficient imaginable market-driven mechanism? Which one do you think ultimately is the sort of theoretical better aggregator of data that can actually provide more useful forecasts, more useful information about the future to the consumers of this pricing data than what's out there now?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I suspect it's going to be some kind of hybrid combination of the two. Look, I mean, the sheer volume of the information coming in lends itself to the kind of AI that might be able to beat out an expert forecaster, for instance. But I don't know what shape that will take, and certainly when comparing this to an individual pundit or a single forecaster, the machine is going to win out, and the market in general is going to beat it out, in part because of these biases that we've been talking about, but also just because there's just so much more information. And then there's also the possibility that there's certain types of super information that's leaking into the market, as we see with things like Supreme Court nominees, and that's an instance where superior information is a decisive advantage.
Yeah, and that's interesting. This is something that comes out too among traders sometimes, where it comes out in sort of a conspiratorial sense sometimes in the tweet markets. If there's a last second tweet right before the deadline that pushes the account holder into another bracket, but there's the question of what information is in the market, and is it enough or is it too much? In other words, you can, when you've got a market based on future events, future decisions made by other human beings, then you've got inherently a risk that some human being with either the ability to decide that outcome or with specialized insider knowledge of what it's likely to be can profit, some would say unfairly, off of the lesser knowledge of the average trader just using publicly available information. To what degree does PredictIt try to control for that, if at all, or does it simply say to the market, hey, look, there's going to be disparate information coming in here that's part of the part of the model here, and you need to go in with your eyes open and know that you might not be the most informed person in the market?
I think we go beyond that. You are definitely not going to be the most informed person in the market, and of course we don't know who that most informed person is going to be ahead of time. Mm-hmm. But that's one of the powerful aspects of a prediction market, or markets in this case PredictIt, is that it's going to attract people who either think or they know that they have superior knowledge, which is, after all, just awareness of facts, mm-hmm. in making their decision. That is not going to be enough to consistently profit over time, right? You might have some good information in terms of one thing and be completely in the dark on something else. Mm-hmm. And then the caps on the amount that can be invested also are deterrent to certain types of behaviors that might not be present in the billion-dollar currency market.
Sure.
So PredictIt's strength is not necessarily in attracting that kind of information. It's more in the ability to quickly aggregate lots of disparate pieces of information and provide a reward for people who are more accurate than not.
So another thing we've heard from traders is that PredictIt obviously has a very passionate and very involved and large and growing fan base. But one of their favorite things to do is to complain about the various aspects of PredictIt. And one of the ones that hear sometimes. I'm
sure glad to see you gone.
Well, one of the things
complaints, Flip.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you hear about is people talking about disinformation, deliberate misinformation on either third-party message boards, Reddit, and things like that, or within the embedded comment boards on PredictIt. And this is not unique to PredictIt. This has been going on. If you looked at the Yahoo Finance message boards in the early online trading days, it's just full of the sort of very low rent pump and dump schemes. But you see a lot of that, and in some markets, it kind of quickly takes over the comment board. People saying, "Oh gosh, this so and so is hugely undervalued, so and so is hugely overvalued," and it quickly becomes apparent they're trying to lower or raise the price. They're arguing exactly the opposite way that they're that their actual investment thesis would guide them. Is there any extent, or should there be any extent to which PredictIt tries to weed that out if people are not just trying to mislead, but actually posting fraudulent information on maybe not on third-party sites, but within the PredictIt platform?
Well, we have looked at that, and you were one of the people looking at it, along with the other members of the team, in terms of where, what can we reasonably expect, and what is within our ability to accomplish. There's certain types of behaviors online which are unacceptable under any circumstances, and it has very little to do with PredictIt. It has to do just with people being extraordinarily nasty to one another. Mm-hmm. I think we have less of that than lots of alternatives. In part because people on PredictIt are here to make a little money and have some fun with it. And if what you're trying to do is preach to the converted, PredictIt's probably not the right place to be doing it. If you're trying to influence the market by putting forward information which is, as opposed to being vicious in some way, but just information that is fabricated or demonstrably incorrect, that's another matter. And we're limited in what we could do, even if we wanted to try to prevent that. And it's not that we didn't look at it, but we're limited in terms of what we're able to do. I will say this: one of the benefits of PredictIt is that I see it as an antidote to fake news. If you're making a decision, a buying decision, even for a $1 winner-take-all contract, and you're basing that decision on bogus information or fake news, you're going to lose your money. And so having accurate information and basing your decision, discerning what might be too good to be true or just completely false information, separating that, spotting it, not acting on that, is one way to improve your performance on PredictIt. So we don't have a perfect solution. We do intervene at certain times when it comes to certain types of speech, but by and large, we're not in the business of policing the content of the speech.
Right. So we're coming up on some of the big primary contests, sort of big event-driven high volume trading days, and then in prior years, PredictIt has had some sort of viewing parties, State of the Union and election night things with traders. And I know that you've met and interacted with a number of the traders at these. What do you learn about the typical PredictIt trader by actually engaging with them face to face rather than through this online intermediate platform?
It's great. I mean, we're hoping to do some more events this election year. We'll certainly be doing some things at the conventions, and then for the various election nights and debates coming up. There's PredictIt traders. I tell you, one thing I learned is they don't drink very much.
Well, it's not good for your ROI, is it?
No, that's okay. It's all right because we're paying for the drinks.
It's not good for their ROI.
Maybe
some additional biases creep into your trading behavior after about the third round.
Yeah, that's the third round bias. We might they're passionate. They are having fun. There's no doubt about it. Even when some of them realize that they've bet on a turkey, they seem to take it in good spirits. So maybe that's just the people who venture into the to the events and want to show up and socialize there. There's a lot of that goes on. So it's always fun to meet these PredictIt traders, and of course they don't lack for self-confidence and strong opinions on certain things, but they're a pretty savvy bunch, and I suspect they're different from people who just bet on sports, for instance. These are pretty savvy, knowledgeable individuals I've found, and I like engaging with them. I see we're almost about to run out of time, so.
Yeah. So let me just ask you before we wrap this up, what do you think ultimately political prediction markets can be? Obviously, they're interesting to traders. They're profitable to many traders. They're used by some academics in terms of their research product. But what can these markets be? What can the prices and forecasts and engagement that's driven by the existence of a market like this be for the public?
That's a great question. So prediction markets and the ability to have skin in the game makes for better educated citizens. And I know that sounds grand, but the fact of the matter is, when you do have some skin in the game, as opposed to just standing on the sidelines and commenting, it clears your head, and it causes you to be more prescient in terms of what you may think is going to happen. So from an individual level, as a citizen in a democracy, I think prediction markets are not only here to stay, but they're going to flourish and grow very quickly. I think also that they're going to be a source of information for citizens who are not in a democracy. I think the ability of these markets to monetize opinion, more importantly, to monetize forecasts and outcomes, are going to be an important alternative to things like public opinion polling, which just aren't possible in certain forms of government. So I think prediction markets are going to increase. I think they become more important. I think they're going to become more relevant, is the third point, in how decisions are made, political decisions are made, as well as business decisions. And lastly, they're going to encompass a lot more than just politics. They're going to be all over the world, these types of markets where people love to make forecasts. It's part of it's sort of how we're wired. Am I going to be able to make it to swim across this river without getting swept downstream? Or am I, who's going to win the general election in November? These are all sort of capabilities that human beings have, is to make forecasts and to judge those forecasts and then to constantly correct what they think is going to happen. So I see great future for prediction markets. I hope PredictIt's part of that. I'm going to certainly do my best to make sure it's the case. And thank you for everything. I meant to say, Flip, I should have said this at the beginning. Thanks for everything you did to make PredictIt a reality. You worked as hard as anybody over here to make it a success, and so you really deserve a lot of the credit.
And I appreciate that. It was a tremendous experience being part of it. It's being part of a project that's truly become, I think it's fair to say, the kind of real-time barometer of American politics. So, final question.
Yeah.
It's a two-parter, lightning round.
Yeah.
Your predictions. Who's the nominee, and does Trump get reelected?
So I'm not going to answer that. My phone's ringing.
Very convenient.
Sorry.
I see the PredictIt intern there.
Yeah,
I'll cue to dial you up.
I'll get with you that one on the next time.
Thanks for being with us, John. Speak to you soon. Bye.